I'm going to call this meeting to order, and we're going to go switch over to Mark there, acknowledgement of the traditional lands, please.
The land upon which we work, live, and sustain ourselves is the ancestral and treaty lands of the Michizagig and Anishinaabe, also known today as the Mississaugas of the Credit, the rightful caretakers and title holders of this land. We also recognize the rich pre-contact history and relationships which include the Anishinaabe and the Ongwe Hongwe.
Since European contact, this land continues to be home to Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples. As responsible community members, we value the diversity, dignity, and worth of all people.
Colonialism displaced and dispossessed Indigenous peoples of their ancestral land
and continues to deny their basic human rights, dignities, and freedoms.
We are committed to learning true history to reconcile, make reparations, and fulfill our treaty obligations to the original peoples and our collective responsibilities to the land, water, animals, and each other for future generations.
Thank you, Mark. Much appreciated. So now we'll go on to the approval of the agenda that we have in front of us. There's two items really with the agenda. So do I have Trustee Clark to put it on, seconded by Trustee Bailey to second it? Any comments or questions about the agenda? All those in favor of the agenda? Okay, so approved. Before we start, are there any declaration of conflict of interest? Seeing none, sorry, we're going to go approval of minutes. There are no approval of minutes. There's no delegations tonight. So we're going to go straight to the staff reports. And before we start, this is going to be a long day for trustees. We're going to go through this meeting till 7, and then we're going to take this information and then use it to go and pick the business cases. So I'll just remind trustees, let's focus our questions, reduce the preamble, straight to the questions, and one question at a time. Because usually when you have one question, it could lead into questions from that question and just make it easier for everyone. So we're going to go into a high-level core education funding announcement presentation. Is that right? No, I'm on the wrong agenda. That was the last one. Yeah, I'm just on the wrong one. I'm into the presentation of business cases by senior team leadership team, and that's going to be started with you, Jasper Hill. Just to let you know, Michelle Stubbings, Superintendent Michelle Stubbings came to me and says she's in discipline. So when her stuff comes up, we'll just move it all to the back and give her opportunity to show. Okay? And Trustee Alves, Trustee Davies, and Trustee Green are all in that discipline meeting. So once that finishes, they'll be joining this meeting, but more importantly, be involved in the business case discussion and selection afterwards. Okay. I'll turn it over to you to Associate Director Jasper Gill.
So thank you to you, Paul. I'm going to ask Controller Letitia Charles to present the business case related to finance process.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. So this is my 11th year at the board, and in all that time, I think it's my second business case that I brought forward. So I hope this speaks to how carefully I've weighed this request and how significant I believe this one is. I also fully recognize the context we're operating in, the need to balance our budget, and the importance of directing as many resources as we possibly can into the classroom. That said, while enrollment numbers have declined, the workload in certain areas, for example, purchasing, is not directly tied to enrollment. Instead, it's driven by increasing legislative demands, accountability expectations, and prevention directives that require a higher level of diligence and documentation. Today, I'm requesting your approval for, today I'm requesting your approval for one full-time FTE in our purchasing department. This is not a full solution to our capacity challenge, but is a critical first step in a measured fiscal responsible request that will improve service delivery, reduce risk, and protect our public funds. I want to share some data from an environmental scan of where we stand today. Our board is the second largest in Ontario. However, our purchasing team is significantly understaffed compared to peer boards. We currently operate with 10 FTE in purchasing. York Region, the most comparable board, although smaller than ours, has 15 FTE, which is 50% more. 3 smaller boards, each with less than half of our student population and about only 1 billion in funding versus our 2 billion, have 9 FTE each. The largest board in the province, not quite double our size, employs 24 FTE in purchasing. This mismatch has led to an unsustainable workload, slowing down essential procurement activities and increasing the risk of costly errors or policy breaches. The pressure on our current team has resulted in the following: insufficient separation of duties, exposing us to potential non-compliance with policy and legislation. We've had 50% increase in supplier occurrence reports over the past year, a sign of declining vendor oversight and monitoring. We've had 50% increase in non-competitive procurement since 2019-20, which impacts our ability to ensure value for money. We've exposed ourselves to audit risk and reputational concerns due to delays in competitive rebidding and increased reliance on non-competitive procurement due to time constraints. The ultimate end result is that delayed purchasing approvals also hold up student resources, construction timelines, and critical service delivery. From a staff perspective, burnout, absenteeism, and turnover are added to the challenge, making it harder to maintain continuity, morale, and placing more pressure on existing staff. Despite all this, we have a great purchasing team and they have delivered. Even with these constraints, our purchasing team has generated significant cost savings for the board. For example, our photocopier contract, we've saved $540,000 over 4 years. On mobile devices and plans, we've saved $222,000 over 4 years. On projectors and accessories, we've saved $257,000. And on snow removal and salting, we've saved $228,000 over 2 years. These are just some of the recent examples there, and these savings allow us to spend elsewhere, thereby directly benefiting students in the classroom. But without additional support, our ability to find future savings or even maintain compliance is in jeopardy. So why has this become even more urgent? Beyond workload, new legislative requirements have added significant additional workload to purchasing, and it is starting to impact our ability to deliver the same level of service. In 2024, the Building Ontario Business Initiative, called the Bobby Act, this legislation mandates that we prioritize Ontario-based suppliers wherever possible. If we choose not to, we must now provide written justification, maintain detailed procurement files, and report regularly to Supply Ontario. This requires additional supplier research, engagement, and documentation, a significant administrative workload that cannot be absorbed with current staffing. Additionally, in March 2025, the province enacted a procurement restriction policy. This new provincial directive prohibits school boards from procuring any service from the U.S. Based vendors, regardless of value. This has immediate and far-reaching impacts on vendor eligibility, contract renewals, and procurement planning. It also requires proactive training and support for departments across the organization and centralized tracking and reporting, all of which falls to purchasing. Combined, these two legislative changes demand more hands-on support, more due diligence, and more oversight to stay in compliance and to avoid both audit findings and delay to frontline service delivery. In closing, let me be honest, one FTE is not enough to fully address the gap, but I'm mindful of financial constraints and I'm making this request with that in mind and will likely be back next year in an effort to continue to close the gap in this area. As a starting point, one new position will help us address the most urgent pressures and support the board in maintaining compliance, finding savings, and ensuring goods and services are acquired responsibly and efficiently. A well-functioning procurement team doesn't just manage risk, it generates value. It safeguards public trust and ensures that every dollar goes as far as possible to support our students. I respectfully urge the board to approve this request. Thank you. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. So just what we're going to do is go through each one individually. And if you have any questions, we'll do it that way. I'm just, for sake of time, are we be able to have everyone business case with that much time presented? I'm not being critical.
I think we'll manage it.
We'll manage it. Okay. And it was well said. And so, do I have any questions? Yes, Trustee Clark.
Yes, thank you, to Chair. Okay, in the interest of brevity, we all know everybody deserves to get paid for what they do, and everyone deserves a livable wage. But if I'm reading this correctly, $1,500 for, it looks like it says furniture. Am I reading that correctly?
Through you, Chair, the $1,500 is when we do the budget cases for all staff. It's if we need to for the first year is to, if we bring on a new person, we may need to buy some additional equipment or furniture in that area. So if we don't need it, then we won't buy it.
Okay, so this is still, it's a conditional, so what happens if the money isn't spent?
Oh, then it goes to that. We don't receive it in the future years. It's a one-time.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, and so just to let everyone know, there's some nice columns there, and we're going to have to do this when we look at, later, figuring out how much money we'd like to spend. But you see the amount, but you see, the length of time, and then you see if it's one time or multi-year. And on that one, you see it's specifically one time. So just get trustees and, formulate it with that, however you see that later on. Okay, trustee Promote.
Thank you, Chair. Just one quick question. So you mentioned that at this point, everything is more challenging because there's provincial direction at this point that you cannot procure from the United States. My question is, have we had any indication that there may be some financial support coming from the province specifically related to this change in direction because of the tariff situation?
Through you, Chair. So first of all, no, there hasn't been, but there's two aspects. So the tariffs are actually, I didn't mention that, but that's a different separate issue. That's even Canadian suppliers potentially increasing costs. And we are having to start additional work of where we have to potentially reopen contracts, or suppliers that we have contracts are coming back and saying our costs are higher. So that could be even Canadian suppliers buying from the US and then dealing with us. But this is specifically, we cannot purchase from US based suppliers. And so that's another layer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Okay, I guess we'll go on to innovation and international programs. There's 4 there. Who's going to be presenting that?
So I'll just turn it over to Superintendent Innovation International Programs, Bernadette Smith.
Okay.
Thank you, Associate Director Ajla, and through you, Chair McDonald. First business case is 1172 Leading Education Innovation Projects, or LEAP. The proposal requests $400,000 to continue the expansion of LEAP and Spark, 2 system-embedded innovation initiatives that directly advance student achievement and well-being. The Leading Education Innovation Project supported over 250 educator-led innovation projects this year, growing from 60 projects the first year to 200, approximately 200 in year 2, and growing more and more each year, with a continued focus on de-streaming, culturally responsive pedagogy, anti-oppressive practice, and inclusive learning environments that build future readiness skills. The initiative provides direct job-embedded professional learning and coaching aligned to school improvement and equity plans and rooted in interdisciplinary approaches to learning. Nearly 500 Spark learning opportunities reached over 150 schools and thousands of students, from AI challenges and virtual reality simulations to robotics design and sustainability challenges. Together, these initiatives integrate STEM, science, coding, and design with literacy and mathematics to promote real-world problem solving and deep learning. This work directly addresses multi-year strategic plan priorities of empowering modern learners, equity and inclusion, and student achievement, and serves as a cornerstone in our system-wide strategy to build global competencies and foster student achievement and well-being. That's case 1.
Case 1. So do we have any questions before we go to the next one? Was this part of what we went to was it Gordon Graydon, or is that where it was?
Yes.
Time parking and all that stuff?
Yes, correct.
So
And tomorrow evening is the lead.
I think Trustee Promoli and Trustee Benjamin, we were there at that event. So that's the program. Thank you.
Please join us tomorrow evening for the LEAP symposium from 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock at the Cannon Building, 8000 Smaga Road. Business case 1174, PDSB e-learning OELC program and Ontario e-learning consortium OELC membership. This case requests $30,000 to sustain PDSB's membership in the Ontario e-learning consortium, which expands access to secondary online learning options across borders. This is critical for students navigating scheduling conflicts, medical accommodations, or seeking pathway-aligned courses unavailable within our board. OELC participation enables PDSB to meet the ministry's online learning benchmark, requiring 32.5% of secondary students to complete at least 1 e-learning credit while offering a broad range of high-quality asynchronous options in STEM, the arts, Indigenous education, and skilled trades. This initiative aligns with the student achievement and equity and inclusion pillars of the multi-year strategic plan by addressing structural barriers and enabling more flexible, personalized learning pathways. It also supports modern learning environments through collaborative professional learning with partner boards and the delivery of future-focused instruction. The funding ensures continuity in an increasingly important mode of course delivery that complements both graduation requirements and diverse learner needs.
Thank you, Bernadette. Any questions? So I have one.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's mandatory.
Yeah.
Why is it here? Why shouldn't it just be on the bottom line? Or in the line, or in the budget line? I'm not being critical. I'm just saying that we're gonna have to approve it, and it's a great money spent because obviously for 30,000, we get access to all this online e-learning. So thank you. Next one.
Next one is business case 1176, Peel Skills Competition for Elementary and Secondary Schools. This proposal requests $100,000 to fund and expand the Peel Skills competitions, which annually engage over 3,400 students across grades 4 to 12 in authentic STEM and skill trade challenges. These events cultivate real-world problem-solving and technical competencies in fields such as robotics, culinary arts, construction, and transportation. The funding will cover venue rentals, equipment, coaching, student transportation, and participation supports, removing cost-related barriers and ensuring equitable access across all schools. The proposal is strongly aligned with student achievement and equity and inclusion, as well as community engagement within the multi-year strategic plan. It supports underrepresented students, including Black, Indigenous, female identifying, and Muslim learners, by creating culturally responsive and inclusive spaces that promote belonging in the skilled trades. Sustained funding will enhance our partnerships with Sheridan College, Humber College, Skills Council of Canada, and local industry, while ensuring continued growth and impact of these pathway enabling events.
Any questions? So you said all schools?
Grades 4 to 12.
Yeah,
Correct.
but so I'm sorry, all schools. So does that mean that anyone it's a grant where schools apply to compete, or?
Yes, so
Okay.
there are challenges throughout the year, and then the funding supports all the students within those schools to attend the larger venue of the skills competition.
Nice.
And this year, Sheridan College offered Davis campus for free for us to use for that event, which enabled us to continue with that partnership.
Wonderful. And so, normally if they do it, they have to either fundraise it for themselves, right?
Correct.
And this helps equal the playing field that anyone get. Okay, thank you. Trustee Clark.
Thank you through you, Chair. Okay. I've noticed that in a lot of the cases, it says policy compliance and then an N. Does that mean we're not currently in compliance with or policy, or?
Through the chair. Through you, Chair.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so that notation simply means if this case is not approved, would it somehow make us non-compliant? And that the answer is no. Like sometimes if something like new comes and we haven't done it before and we require resources to be compliant, then that would be yes, it's required. Otherwise, we won't be compliant. So in this case, when it's not around compliance, this request, that's why there's a no or N for no.
Oh, okay, so that means then we'd have to pass this in order to be
No,
compliant.
just the yeses.
Just the yeses are around policy compliance, because when there's a no, it means that this case is not required to be compliant.
Okay, got it, thanks.
One of those double negatives,
Yes.
right? I'm bad at those. So again, all the Y's got to be approved. Okay. Thank you. No other questions, so please proceed to the next one.
Thank you, Chair. The fourth one for me is business case 1177, all data transportation technology programs. This case requests $20,000 to support ongoing access to all data, a digital tool central to all transportation technology programs in PDSB secondary schools. All data provides essential repair diagrams, diagnostic protocols, and manufacturer specs that simulate real-world auto shop conditions. Teachers report daily to weekly usage across 180 to 200 students per site, emphasizing that without this resource, both instructional quality and student safety would be compromised. Aligned with the multi-year strategic pillars of empowering modern learners and equity and inclusion, this case enhances student engagement in skilled trades through access to high-tech industry standard tools. It also directly supports equity-focused board strategies such as the Black Student Success Strategy and affirming Muslim identities by offering identity-affirming real-world programming in non-traditional pathways. With the growing relevance of electric vehicles and diagnostic technology, this modest investment ensures that PDSB skilled trades instruction remains current, inclusive, and industry aligned. Thank you.
That's my own card.
Yes.
Any questions here? Okay, that concludes Bernadette. Any questions before we switch to the next group? So there'll be equity, Indigenous communications, engagement. Who's going to be presenting on that?
Thank you, Associate Director Osla, and through you, Chair McDonald. So the purpose of the new positions will be funded through the new positions will be funded through the Indigenous Education Grant. So I thought it's important to say that. And the positions have been approved by the Indigenous Education Council. These positions really aligns with our ministry guidelines and support the Peel District School Board strategic goals for Indigenous education. Also important to note that as of September 2025, the Indigenous education team will be developing programming for field centers that will be grounded in Indigenous knowledge, in Indigenous histories, and environmental practices. These positions also align with our board's, the goals of our board's multi-year strategic plan, and very importantly, the indicators of success on the student achievement plan around achievement in core academic skills, well-being, the importance of experiential learning, are looking at ensuring that our graduation rates for Indigenous students are on par with other students, and credit accumulation as well. We also looked at the data from the Equity and Accountability Report Card to ensure that we're closing the gap around the disproportionately lower achievement for Indigenous students in literacy, numeracy, and graduation rates. And so these positions are certainly important. So business case 1142, the Peel District School Board has created space for Indigenous students to earn their Ontario secondary school diplomas while accessing post-secondary experiences and earning post-secondary credits. And we continue to deepen those relationships with post-secondary institutions. This position will support Indigenous students in navigating pathways to post-secondary education, to apprenticeship, to the workplace, while ensuring their transition between elementary and secondary schools are culturally responsive. The role will also expand dual credit opportunities, working in collaboration with colleges, universities, and community partners to develop programs that reflect Indigenous perspectives and their career aspirations. We also want to deepen and increase the representation of Indigenous students enrollment in the Algoma League program and the CUTM program, as well as expand those opportunities for post-secondary education for Indigenous students. And this position will support us to do this. And certainly we're looking at a new partnership as well with the medical school at Toronto Metropolitan University, which I'm working with my colleague here, Superintendent Leone, on. So this is a critical position to supporting Indigenous students' pathways to post-secondary.
So that's, so you introduced 1140 and 1142?
So 1142.
But what about 1140? Did you say that those are funded by the government?
Yes, all of these positions are funded through the Indigenous education funding, all of them, and they have already been approved through the Indigenous Education Council.
Okay. Okay, so thank you. Do we have any questions so far on where we are? Nope, please continue.
In terms of 1151, this position will support the integration of Indigenous knowledge into literacy, language, and English programs, ensure an alignment with the rights-based approach to Indigenous education. The role will guide educators in embedding Indigenous perspectives into their teaching while supporting First Nations, Métis, and Inuit students in accessing culturally responsive literacy resources and Indigenous language instructions. This role directly addresses gaps in culturally appropriate literacy programming and ensure compliance with the right to read framework.
Any questions? Please keep rolling.
Similarly, 1152, this position will continue the successful Indigenous Knowledges in Mathematics program, which incorporates Indigenous ways of knowing in math instruction. This role will strengthen community-led teachings, providing students with culturally responsive mathematics curriculum. I've seen this work in the classroom. This approach has been proven to increase engagement and achievement in mathematics for Indigenous learners and all learners.
Perfect. Any questions? Wonderful. You're on the last one. You too?
This position supports schools and educators to action the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action, our multi-year strategic plan goals, as well as school improvement and equity planning. This position will co-teach with staff to build their capacity to embed Indigenous knowledge, histories, and ways of being in the curriculum and teaching practices. This position will also provide school level and individual classroom level support for students and teachers to implement curriculum that creates improved student achievement and well-being, in addition to supporting the credit granting opportunities that we've already started at the center, particularly in the areas of environmental science and Indigenous aesthetics, co-op, and experiential learning.
Okay. Do we have any questions, comments? No? Does that conclude the mo?
So we do have a proposal for 4 EAs, but we're looking to amend that to 2. And that's because we've assumed programming at the field centers and we will need to divert those fundings to programming at the field centers. So we're proposing 2 instead of 4.
Okay. So you can present, yeah.
Yes, so in terms of the central EAs for Indigenous students,
Okay.
these educational assistants will provide targeted supports for First Nations, Métis, and Inuit students who require safety and well-being assistance and other supports. This will also build the capacity of other educational assistants across the system to implement trauma-informed, holistic approaches to supporting Indigenous students. This position ensures that Indigenous students receive the necessary care and guidance to thrive academically and socially.
Okay.
That concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none online. Thank you very much. So now we're going to go to curriculum and school improvement. Who's going to be presenting that?
Good evening, everyone, and through you, Chair McDonald. I will be presenting 4 business cases on behalf of the Curriculum and School Improvement Department. Our first case, which is 1186, is in support of the ongoing work we've been doing to support kindergarten enrollment in the Peel District School Board. As many of you know, our kindergarten registration numbers have been decreasing over the years. However, we put forward some significant efforts this year to advertise widely our kindergarten programs. These efforts included internal initiatives as well as initiatives that extended outside into community. As a result, we now have over 7,000 students registered, keeping us in alignment with the projected 9,000. We believe that these efforts were a direct result of the work we've been doing in community. To maintain this momentum, we would like to secure an amount of $13,000 to hire a retired principal who can help us maintain our outreach efforts into community starting October, extending into December 2025.
Any questions? Seeing none, carry on to the second one, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Our second business case, 1189, is around secondary timetables. Every year, the curriculum department hires anywhere between 1 to 3 casual administrators to support secondary schools with building equitable and inclusive timetables. This year, with the transition to Power School and Power Scheduler, the need was more significant. We hired 2 vice principals to support the work in our current secondary schools to build timetables. Our request is to rehire 2 VPs starting February 2026. This initiative will cost the board $159,000. We would like to maintain this support to ensure that we continue effective programming, equitable timetabling, ensuring that students have access to programming as per their goals.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, let's move on to the impact coach.
Thank you. So this business case is 1194. And it is through the Counting on You program that is supporting learning for students who need additional support in math and literacy outside the instructional day. This is a program that has been offered throughout PDSB. We currently serve approximately 12,000 students from grades 7 to 10 across anywhere between 85 and 96 schools during the school year, as well as during March break and some during the summer months. The curriculum department is looking at expanding this program, but we would need additional staffing to do so. The additional staff number will support the expansion of this program from its existing 85 to 100 schools to almost up to 130 schools in the Peel District School Board. This request is a net zero cost to the board as these funds are all cost recoverable.
So, okay. I'm trying to keep track of all this. Yes. Okay, so this isn't a person, just to clarify with the trustees, this isn't a person that goes in a middle school. This is a person that coordinates activities that go on middle school. Gotcha. The trustee made that.
This is is a net zero. There's a amount.
Through you, Chair, thank you for that question. So this is the cost that we would be paying to hire the impact coach to cover that program, but that is reimbursable through the ministry.
You have a question, Trustee Alex?
Through you, Chair. How is this work being done now?
Thank you for that question. Currently, this is a outside the instructional day program. So it is offered either before school, at lunch, or after school. It supports literacy and mathematics in anywhere from grade 7 to grade 10. And in order to engage our students, there's always a theme or a big idea presented within the course. Something to the effect of basketball or culinary arts or robotics. And through those programs, we teach the literacy and mathematics.
But through you, Chair, maybe I misunderstood because I came in the middle of this, but this is for a coordinator role. Is this not? To Carlos' earlier question, we're hiring for someone to coordinate services?
Correct. It's not someone to actually be in the school.
So how are these services being coordinated with outside personnel? Is my question.
Thank you for that question. So we currently have 2 coaches who support the COI program. We're asking for a third to maintain some momentum to support up to 130 schools.
Adding more schools and coordinating.
And we're losing enrollment. It's okay.
But it costs us nothing.
Oh, okay. I thought, assuming the ministry will reimburse.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for those questions. We can move on. I'm sorry, I have another one. Sorry, Trustee Davies.
Just for total clarification, this is one of those, you can either spend it or you lose it kind of thing. It's not like we can use this money for something else. I just want to be totally clear on that. And also my secondary question was, what is the current utilization of the two coaches that we have now?
Thank you for those questions. So if we spend the money, so we don't, what happens is we spend the money and we get reimbursed. So if we don't get reimbursed for it. And at this point in time, our two current COI coordinators are at capacity.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing nothing else, let's move on to the next item on your list. Is it 1205?
So our last business case through the Curriculum and School Improvement Department is the Specialist High Skills Major Program. Additional staffing similar to the COI program. This also is a cost recovery opportunity where we hire somebody and then the ministry reimburses us for this additional staff. Currently, we're serving 2,341 students in 65 programs across 32 schools. We are hoping to expand it to 90 programs serving over 3,500. And in order to maintain the momentum and the growth, we are asking for an additional staff.
Okay, so this is again being funded if we do it. I'll ask the question. As the business case. Trustee Ellis.
Yes, thank you, Chair. My only concern would be like, I know we're making the assumption if it's something that we definitely don't have to pay for and the ministry is committed to, I think it's great. My only reservation is coming from Minister Calandra's comments as recent as like 2 days ago about boards being top heavy. Are we like certain that the ministry will cover this additional role?
Through you, Chair. For the COI program, it is for a specific purpose. However, the ministry's changed its enveloping rules a little bit, right? So in the past, you had to use it for this something specific, and if you didn't, you could defer it and so forth. In the COI program, it's a little, that's not a mandate anymore. So if we don't use it, it will contribute to other things. In terms of SHSM, it is specifically for that. So the difference between the two programs.
And and I think that's an important thing. These are programs by the government. So it's not a top heavy kind of thing. Okay, it's an initiation from the government to do high skill majors, right? And that's and to do that. And then the Counting on You program is an initiative that comes from the government. So it's nothing, yes, it's management of a program, but it is a funded process that they understand that has management.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sorry, through your chair. So if we don't use it here, we use it somewhere else. Just could you elaborate on that comment?
Through your chair. So in the past, when the ministry said enveloping and you had to use it for a specific purpose, you could not use it for anything else. Meaning that if you didn't use it in year, you could defer it potentially for the same purpose next year, or in some cases you have to return it. In a lot of the cases this year, they have sort of drop the envelopes, meaning that if you don't use it, so there's an intended purpose, but if you don't use it, it can be used for other areas. So it kind of drops to the bottom, but it goes to the bottom line, it can be used for other purposes. So COI right now falls into that category. It is for a specific purpose. However, if not all the funding is used, then it could contribute funds to other areas. SHSM is different. In that one, it is very specific. If you don't use it, then you lose. So again, every envelope is slightly different.
Thank you, Trustee. Does that confuse you?
Yes. I was going to ask the question that I think is the natural follow-up.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I know we have a lot of cases to get through, but just following on that. So if the funding that we're talking about here for the COI program were not used for the COI program, what could it potentially be used for? Like it's not just like here's the money and just throw it wherever you want, right? Like there's still limitations on it.
Through you, Chair. So that basically just forms part of our overall funding. So again, when we look at our funding, it's not we get funding for this and we tag it necessarily unless there's an envelope that's really strict. So in for COI, it would go in our overall revenue and it would not necessarily specifically contribute to one specific thing. We just want our overall revenue contribute to all of the work of the board. So it help to balance the budget.
Does that answer your question?
Yes. But
And so just to put everyone in perspective, so just so you ever all know, if you total down to the bottom, we have 14 million. How much is this? Right at the bottom, it's 14 million, right?
How much is
No, it's 148,000. So I was saying, so with that money, Director, how much do you think we have?
So I think that's 7.2, and that's where we're gonna talk about the use of the funding that we are receiving from other districts. Also, all the expenditure that the staff has put together before the business cases. I'll just go over the overall number. At this point, once you take those into factor, we have a surplus of 11 million. Against the business cases of 14 or 15 million dollars. So that's what in order to balance the budget, if we can cut the business cases down to 11.2, then we will balance the budget without anything. But there are other things that I will talk about it, I think in our conversation when we're looking at the individual business cases.
Right, and sorry to put the cart in the horse before everything here, but I just want to give trustees a little understanding, when we're looking at certain things like $30,000 on a, 11 or $14 million, just to put it in perspective. Yeah. Anyway, Trustee Alves, you have a question.
Thank you, through you, Chair. So let's see, I'm glad that CEO Jessica chimed in there. So we'll have an opportunity later to discuss how perhaps $140,000 could be better used somewhere else, or perhaps might be shifted away to balance the budget. But it's good. You're saying yes, we will have that opportunity?
Yes.
Okay, so that would be helpful to know when we get to that stage, what can move, what can't move, what we might allocate to EAs or CIAC or balancing of the budget because we have less funds. So I'll reserve my comments for that time and let staff proceed to this. Sorry, thank you.
Right, and just to clarify for trustees, so we're just presenting the business case today. Then we're gonna hear the final numbers that we think we're gonna be close to, and then what we can do on which ones we select. Then we're gonna go to a trustee session at 7 o'clock, and then we get to decide what's important to us. So it's very important when we go through these things to understand what is funded or not, right? If it's mandatory, that column on the side, and yes, we have to have those, basically. And then understand the perspective of how much money and what we're gonna have to do to pick priorities. Okay? Okay, Trustee Pomona.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm so sorry, just one final question. So if we were to take that $140,000 and change and not allocate that for COI, so if we spent it on COI, then we could potentially get that reimbursed by the province. But if we spend it on something else, there's no reimbursement. Am I understanding this correctly?
So just further to what controlling, as you mentioned, we get the funding, COI funding we get. We have it. It's just if we don't spend this money, we could spend it on something else. There's no envelope. It's not that you get a reimbursement. We have the funding, ministry has allocated the funding to us. And in the past, it was enveloped, and that means it could only be used for COI programs. And now, starting last year, the ministry has said, if you don't use the funding for that, even though we're giving you for that purpose, if whatever your expenditures are, anything left over, you can use for anything else in the book.
So a good example is if we don't want to use the COI for 140, we could say, let's put two high school major people in. One will be funded by high school majors and the other would be funded through the COI.
If I can just add, I think the important thing is to look at it. Are we supporting the program? If we think that we need this additional support to support the program, then I think we need to look at from that point of view as compared to other priorities that we have. But from funding point of view, regardless of that, whether it's approved or not, if it's approved, then we'll use it for that position. If it's not, we're going to use it anyways for something else for the budget, to balance the budget.
Anyway, we'll have those discussions when we, sit together as trustees and figure out what's in and out. Again, 140 is not a lot of money when we're dealing with probably 4 million.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that's covered all the those items. Any other questions around that? So we're going to switch to human resource partnership and equity. And is that Mr.? Yeah, okay. So you're gonna present that, please? Yes, starting at 12:10.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and through you, Chair. All the 6 business cases that are presented by HR relate to operational costs that are currently being incurred, and for some reason, whether that's inflationary or increased cost of doing business, the business cases support that. The first one is increase to hiring to casual pools. We are requesting a business case to increase the amount of monies towards hiring retired administrators and other professionals on a temporary basis throughout the school year to strengthen our fill rates and increase the size of our casual pools for educational assistants, occasional teachers, and other casual groups. These positions will support with expedient hiring during peak periods to focus on recruiting to expand our casual pools with qualified and experienced candidates. We know that we've been facing some staffing shortages and disruptions in the classroom continuity, and that places existing pressure on our staff, which ultimately lead to impacting the quality of the support provided to students. So that's the first business case, 12:10.
Okay, do we have any questions on increasing the hiring? Yes, Trustee Clark?
Yes, thank you, through you, Chair. I'm not sure I understand, is the $90,000, is that, how is that broken down, or is it just, does it just go to a hiring firm to supply us with these temp workers?
No, I guess I should say it's a pool of money where they can hire, get retired vice principals to charge against it, and when it's emptied, it's used. So it's just like it's just a ability to bring on casual people, and that's the fund for it.
That's where it's a fund, right? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Clark. Jeff. No questions. So I have a question. So, EAs is one of our biggest challenges of fill rates and hiring. What kind of impact do you see this making to improve that?
So thank you for that question, Chair. I think the biggest impact would be the turnaround. Currently, we do, in partnership with our existing administrators within the school, they have competing interests, competing demands within the school. So perhaps the turnaround time from the time when we shortlist, interview, hire will be significantly reduced when we have dedicated personnel who look at the entire recruitment process from end to end.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, digital wellness platform.
Thank you. This particular proposal supports the safety and well-being pillar of the NYSP. This is a continuation of the ask. We do currently have this platform that is available to staff. There has been an increase in annual licensing fee. Last year, we covered the cost partially through the budget process, and also a combination of internal savings. We're asking for a full to secure an approval for an annual licensing fee of $50,000 for LifeSpeak Inc. digital wellness platform. We have seen an exponential increase in the usage of this platform from when it was launched in Q2 of 2023, from 158 clicks to almost 10,000 clicks by staff at this point in time. So there has been an exponential increase in staff accessing wellness, digital tools, videos, articles, resources from this platform. The vendor's licensing policy mandates a full annual payment of $50,000. Partial payments are no longer accepted. As such, you see the business case before you. The fee structure is designed to cover comprehensive supports, updates, and maintenance for the entire year. The annual fee provides a predictable expense, aiding in budget planning and financial management for the department.
Interesting. Very interesting. Any questions here? Trustee Davies.
So with 10,000 clicks and $50,000, that's $5 a click. I think that's excellent value for what it is. Are we somehow going to also promote this further through staff, emails, letters, and stuff like that, so that we get full usage?
Thank you for that question, and through you, Chair. We run monthly monthly campaigns through our internal SharePoint site. We're also advertising through the union newsletters, and I think I want to credit our union partners here. They've been immensely helpful in getting this messaging out. We also have, this is one part of the wellness platform. We are also augmenting our service with the employee assistance program and through their digital wellness as well. I just gave you a cross section of one platform, but we do have another service built in. So there are a variety of ways we are advertising this directly with our client group.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Can trustees get access to this?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, put us on that monthly list.
We'll include you in the challenges as
Yeah.
well.
Now, can I ask, I don't know if it's the right question, but can this be put under our employee benefits kind of stuff? You know, just, it seems similar in you know, support.
Like a column, 10%.
Anyway, just curious, is that our employee benefits program? Is this competing or in addition to, or can it be covered by?
Yeah. So through you, Chair McDonald, all of our employee benefits are through our provincial benefit trusts.
Okay.
So whatever the benefits are done, they are all done through the provincial trust.
Okay.
And they decide what kind of benefits they are.
Okay.
So these are add-on
onto that. Gotcha. And you know, well, should comment. Okay. Sorry, trustee Promoli.
Thank you, Chair. Oh, thank you, Chair. Sorry, just really quickly, I just really want to understand what this program is. So what do staff members find when they actually click through to this website? What's there?
So we run monthly challenges online, so campaigns like wellness campaigns, or whether that is better financial planning. There are topics that we have that people staff access on a regular basis, depending on what's happening in their wellness journey from their events with the school board. I can give you a little sneak peek in terms of what are the most searched items in a second. So there's a lot of video series on the platform, video modules, question and answer, tip sheets, web chats, video transcripts, and we're seeing almost a 50-50 breakdown of in-person access or maybe picking up the phone and talking to a counselor. 50% of, a little less than 50% of that, and more so reliance on self-paced access of digital resources. Some of the topics include personal and professional development, mental health, resilience and mindfulness, physical health, parenting and elder care, financial health. So those kinds of topics.
Great, thank you.
Great. Okay, we'll move on to medical notice budget increase.
I just wanted to state that this budget case 1213 is an enhancement to the expense that already exists. We're seeing, certainly it isn't a hidden secret, we're seeing an increase in the number of sick days utilized by staff. As such, being responsive to that, we're also perhaps getting greater opportunities to seek additional clarification. And by doing so, the employer bears the cost of seeking that clarification. So therefore, the reliance on a greater need for adding the cost to the medical notes. This increase is necessary to accommodate the rising costs of physician fees and growing number of medical forms submitted. There has been a notable increase in the number of medical forms submitted by employees. This rise is attributed to various factors, including increased awareness of health benefits and more stringent documentation requirements. And certainly post-pandemic, we have seen an exponential increase in access to the health benefits. Increasing the budget will ensure that the department can efficiently manage the volume of medical notes without compromising on quality or timeline. That results in maintaining a healthy and productive workforce. Just to give you some, although we have made significant gains in terms of accessing staff, we've also made cautious decreases in our pattern of sick leave use. We have gone down year over year from 2021-2022 school year to the 2023, the last data that we have for 2023-2024 school years by 2.51 days. We know that we have more work to do. With that said, to do that more work, we do need the supports that we require. And as such, you see a business case where we have greater opportunities to access medical questionnaires, ask for more forms, so that we're supporting staff accessing those leaves on a justified basis.
Interesting. Student Trustee House, you have a question?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, thank you. So perhaps I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. So when I see the expenditure on medical notes was 180,000, is that a dollar figure?
That's right.
So the Peel District School Board in the last school year spent $180,000 to produce medical notes for for staff to take this time off.
To question and probe more in terms of when that first medical note comes in. Thereafter, when we question staff, that's when it's on the employer to reimburse for those additional questionnaires.
Understood. And does the Peel District School Board, I'm just thinking about news and other boards and things that have been in the news. Do we do anything to investigate, absences that may be, for lack of a better word, invalid?
Absolutely. We are, again, each medical accommodation plan is individualized, where there are certain patterns that are noticeable and where sick leave is not a justified option. We have multiple ways in which we can tackle. So one of the ways would be probing further, certainly investigating further, and perhaps even going to the extent of denying access to sick leave, and we've done that.
And through you, Chair, have we ever done anything to recoup the cost?
That is a significant ask, and jurisprudence does say that given the power imbalance between an employee and an employer, that will be an uphill battle.
Got it.
And perhaps not a welcome move by our union partners.
Understood. Thank you.
Good. Any other questions? Okay, Trustee Vermollen.
Thank you, Chair. In what circumstances are we asking for medical notes from employees if they have something work?
So as an employer, we're only entitled to restrictions and limitations without any diagnosis. So where those restrictions and limitations are unclear, or where we need to probe further, for instance, a medical note comes in and says, well, this teacher requires a dedicated room to themselves, and they're teaching either music or French, and that may not be a possibility. So in those circumstances, to really understand why does somebody require their own space, and what are the restrictions and limitations if they don't have that space.
So just to be clear, this isn't for a standard illness. If somebody is unwell and should not be in the classroom for the day because we don't let people at school, it's more if somebody needs specific accommodations. That's what we're talking about here?
For the most part, but in some instances where there's a pattern of absences established, it may lend itself towards that too.
Thank you for the clarity.
Okay. See no other questions, we can move on to 1214.
Through you, Chair. 1214 is a new business case for the change in the landscape of the principal, vice principal, sick leave, and short-term disability plan adjudication process. These are new processes that have been negotiated through the central bargaining process with the Crown and the principal association. We're recommending to seek a contractual services from the school board's cooperative, a third-party firm to adjudicate the principal, vice principal sick leave process. They would be adjudicating all requests access to short-term disability benefits, adjudicating and case managing all absences of 5 consecutive days or greater from the onset to full resolution, adjudicating incidental days that are non-consecutive that require access to 120 days of the short-term disability benefit in the same manner as consecutive days, managing the appeals process and reviewing and managing exemption requests. The memorandum of settlement, the provincial terms and conditions, provides for the implementation of an adjudication process for the use of the STBB for principals and vice principals effective September 1, 2025. The benefits of outsourcing would entail confidentiality, ensuring protection of sensitive medical information, and supporting access to detailed medical documentation on a case-by-case basis. Workload management, supplementing internal PDSB resources to help manage and balance workloads more effectively. Consistent employee support, providing timely and ongoing support to school board employees, ensuring that they receive the assistance they need. Reduce absence durations, leveraging an approach that helps shorten the duration of absences, fostering a healthier workplace. And expertise on complex cases, providing for specialized knowledge and guidance for handling complex and intricate cases. We know that this process may also become the blueprint for what's to come when all the collective agreements expire next year. And as such, it is important to engage in processes that are robust, tested, and perhaps by the time we agree with all the collective agreements, are time tested.
Any questions? Trustee Davies?
Have we done any research into how much money this will actually save us? Because some of these sorts of investments, there is cost savings and it offsets the costs themselves.
Thank you for that question. I don't have a particular analysis of what the cost savings would be through this, but I can certainly get that back. I'll have to get back to you with that.
So if I understand correct, this is a requirement of our agreement with this group. So we have to do it. Okay. Okay. Thank you. We're on to 12:15, right?
The next two are recurring cases from last year only because they were approved on a one-time cost, and you will see some inflationary cost increases.
Hypersonic missiles, ballistic missiles, and advanced
Sorry.
missiles.
Special guest, Donald.
Okay.
So 1215 is the hazardous waste disposable services. This is through the health and safety department is requesting a budget increase of $25,000 per year to pay for the hazardous waste disposal program within our schools. The increase is being requested due to increased year-over-year costs associated with disposal, as well as larger amounts of waste being disposed of at the PVSP facilities. And I'm happy to take any questions on that.
Excellent. I don't think we're good. Kind of have to do a small amount. Okay. I think we're done with you. Thank you so much. Now we'll go on to leadership development. Who's going to be presenting that for us? Okay, there you go.
Thank you. And through you, Chair McDonald, I have two business cases to present this evening. The first one is business case 1179 on school partnerships. Our department hopes to continue building and securing our strong external partnerships with post-secondary institutions, businesses, and industry partners. You would have seen this year in the board report. In the past year and a half, we built 9 partnerships that have served over 5,500 students in 75 elementary and secondary schools throughout the region. The partnerships have resulted in significant financial investments from our partners. The $80,000 really is to cover some operational costs that would help absorb some costs, for instance, student transportation, permits, venues, student recognition, supplies and services, and other operating costs for the partnerships. And so it's mainly to support the implementation of the programs. We will continue to focus on student achievement and success with a focus on pathways to provide students with opportunities and experiences that will amplify their academic skills, such as credentialing and badging, as well as expanding their network so that students are more future ready and employable.
Great. Any questions around that? I think it's pretty straightforward. So the next one is on, I guess, peer support mentoring program.
The next one is peer support mentoring program. So this is a program that has offered newly appointed and acting principals with one-on-one on-site guidance and mentorship from retired, experienced, and vetted retired principals for 3 days during the academic year, and is centered around addressing operational procedural aspects inherent to effective school management and really has served as valuable capacity building. The program aims to bridge the gap between the practical and theoretical skills of doing the job. So it's a bit of job shadowing, just reflecting on this past year. I'll just share a bit of feedback. So in this past academic year, we've had 47 new and acting principals. They were matched with 7 retired principals. So the cost is to pay for those daily principals to come in. Each mentee was allocated 5 days this year, but we've adjusted that. They've accessed 3 days with the 5 allocated. So this is why I'm asking for a reduced budget allocation in this section. Feedback from mentors is that they've been able to address a range of leadership responsibilities, including staffing, performance appraisal, school improvement planning, equity-based decision-making, time management, finances, and personal and professional growth overall. This is direct feedback from exit surveys. And looking ahead, I just want to say that for next year, we have approximately 16 new acting principals going in the fall. And we project in our department that about 50 will go through in that springtime. So in total, we're looking at about 50 new leaders next year, which is hopefully, which will be allowing them to allocate 3 days each for mentorship.
Wonderful. Any questions? I can't say how valuable this is. I think it's really valuable. And that number of new people, it really is difficult for a superintendent to do the mentoring. So I really know firsthand comments like you're saying. It's very valuable. So we mentor Ps. Do we do any mentoring on VPs, or that's the principal's role to do that?
So we have a vice principal network.
Okay.
This year we've had 4 half days, and we do mentors. We also have a mentor coaching program through our mentorship qualification program, which is an AQ course. So we do it's not a program like this, but we do have a vice principal network.
And what about the SOs? Do we have a mentoring program from that?
That is not something that would fall in my department portfolio, but it would be, I guess, our senior team meeting. So I'll pass that over to Associate Director Angela to respond.
So that's a great question, Chair McDonald. In terms of mentorship for our newly appointed SOEs, one of the good pieces is that we don't necessarily have very many right now. But between the leadership and capacity that's been provided by myself, as well as Associate Director De Silva, through sort of the on-the-ground direct mentorship on a regular basis, that is one important component, as well as OPSOA also provides mentoring opportunities directly for our SOEs to provide an external mentor also. And that oftentimes when new SOEs are appointed directly into the field, we match them with a field mentor as well, someone with a little bit more experience that can walk them through some of the daily operations and pieces that really sort of pop up on the job in the moment.
That's great. Thank you so much for. I know it's a lot of track, but I think professional development is really important. Thank you. I guess that covers all your items. Any comments or questions? No. So we're now going to go on to safety and well-being. Who's going to be presenting that? Okay.
Thank you, Chair. So the Safety and Wellbeing Department has 4 business cases. The first one that's on the list are for the child and youth care practitioners, and I believe that they're already in the budget books for this year.
I believe this business case 1162 is for $10,000.
That's it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Operations office supplies.
To give them some supplies for one?
Yes.
Okay, my mistake. I'm going to skip over that, and I may need to come back to that.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
1165, 1165?
Certainly. So 1165, the remaining 3 business cases really do support our most marginalized students with the most needs in the system. So the social emotional learning behavior consultant is a PSSP staff, and they really bring a deep clinical lens to the function of maladaptive behaviors or stress behaviors that we see in our schools. And they create thorough safety plans and recommendations that really do promote positive adaptive behaviors. They work to understand the root cause of behavior and train staff to implement the safety plan in such a way that really does reduce the likelihood of injury. So these consultants work with RBAs, intense support EAs, and the ASD team. So they provide student-specific safety training to address situations where there are staff or students being struck, meaning kicked, hit, bitten, pushed, hair pulled, etc., by a student. They are helping when students' bodily substances, feces, spittle, urine, or where the student is eloping, so running from a class. The need for consultants to address students with significant and complex portraits that result in violence in schools and work refusals is overwhelming. Prior to the addition of one consultant 2 years ago, wait lists for student-specific safety training were often 50 to 60 students long. With the additional consultant, the wait lists have been significantly reduced, with training usually occurring within 1 to 2 weeks of the referral being entered. The additional consultant will continue to allow us to be responsive to the needs of schools and reduce the likelihood of workplace injuries required on the OHSA, and reduce the need for exclusions and the negative impacts to other students in the school. And this connects to our multi-year strategic plan through safety and well-being.
Thanks. Any questions to Trustee Ellis?
Thank you, through your chair. Just a comment to say that I think this is a welcome thing for us to see before us. I know that we sent out a letter to the Ministry for Resources when it came to things involving behaviors and discipline, and I appreciate seeing this before us tonight. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. No other comments, so let's move on to 1166.
Thank you. So currently we have one secondary integrated services teacher. So students with significant barriers to attending school receive service from the integrated services team. And this is the only source of education or programming for these students. This includes students who are excluded, those on house arrest, those with significant mental health illnesses, and students who require significant preparation and transition support to be able to safely attend school. Currently, the caseload for the secondary teacher is carried by one teacher. This teacher supports students daily. However, the amount of time spent with each student on academic, social, emotional learning strategies that support a return to school is minimal at best. This teacher helps students learn to read, for example. They help students complete credits for graduation. And programming and instruction often need to be considerably modified. It's important to note that students' support typically carries over from year to year, and given the complex needs of some of these students, support is needed for years, so caseloads continue to grow. This additional teacher will meet capacity needs to increasingly complex student portraits and significant numbers of students not attending school due to mental health and other concerns. Thank you.
Great. Any questions? Yes, Trustee Clark.
Yes, thank you, through you, Chair. How many students are we able to help with a single teacher? And how many are left unhelped?
Thank you for the question, Trustee Clark. It's a difficult question to answer because, the integrated services is a team and we'll pull in other resources, CYCPs, for example, but they can't deliver programming. So we would like to say that nobody goes unhelped. However, we want to do more than provide check-ins with students. We really want to be that source of programming and support to get these kids to school.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no other questions, nothing online. I think you're done. Oh, you have one more? Oh, 69. I already read it. I was ahead. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. The last one is for a registered mental health professional, specific to ASD and DD populations. So a social worker or a registered mental health worker would service individual counseling needs, build system capacity to recognize the signs of mental health distress and mental illness, and provide service students with autism or intellectual developmental disabilities. The social worker would consult with and be a resource to school-based social workers, supporting classes and students in mainstream settings, as well as provide identity-specific individual and family counseling. There is a significant gap in service for mental health services for students with intersectional needs. So it could be DDASD with mental illness or mental health distress. The social worker or registered mental health worker would also work on education programs to promote the development of healthy sexuality and decrease the incidence of inappropriate sexualized behavior in students with ASD or DD. And similarly, this professional would work with members of the safety and well-being team to develop consent culture materials suitable for this population to decrease the risk of victimization. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Any questions? Okay, now you can do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So we're going to move on to special, Claudine, I guess, special education. You're going to go on to 1144.
Yes, thank you, through you, Chair McDonald. I'm pleased to present 5 business cases on behalf of the Special Education Department that were created in consultation with members of SEAC and our schools and community. In order to ensure fiscal responsibility, we have merged 2 existing roles, special education resource teachers and special programs resource teachers, into the newly defined inclusive education resource teachers. In doing such, we've created an opportunity to support students with exceptional needs through a more cohesive, collaborative, and school-centered approach. Having said that, this transition streamlines staffing from 55 to 36 FTE, which is an overall reduction of 19 FTE across these 2 roles. However, to truly maximize the impact of this new model, we're requesting 2 additional IERTs. These positions are central to our ability to build capacity in schools, support complex student transitions and portraits, implement inclusive, equitable, and responsive programming, and meet ministry requirements as guided by Special Education Ontario. Our principals and superintendents have clearly communicated the need for central staff presence in schools, and this aligns directly with our vision for a responsive, needs-based model. The IRFPs are also instrumental in advancing all of our NYSP commitments. By investing in these roles, we're not just filling positions, we truly are empowering and building the capacities of educators in schools and strengthening our system overall to ensure that every student has what they need to be supported and thrive. Thank you.
Any questions? Yes, Trustee Vermont.
Thank you, Chair. So I just want to be clear here. In merging these 2 roles, we've actually reduced the number of people providing the support by 19, but now we're looking to add 2 more of them. Can I ask how they're distributed across schools? So this is 36 now, potentially, well, plus 2 more, working across multiple schools to support this number of students.
Thank you for your question, Trustee Kamali, and through you, Chair McDonald. Yes, so they will be distributed among schools. We are moving into a quadrant model of support, so there will be 9 educational resource teachers per quadrant, but the North, as we know, has an increasing population. So the ask for 2 more would add additional supports to the 2 North quadrants, making sure that individual teacher school caseloads do not exceed like 8 to 9 schools per resource teacher.
Sorry, I know we want to go quickly, Chair. If it's okay, just for you. So we have, so one teacher may have 8 or 9 schools, and then the students in each of those 8 or 9 schools.
Yes, and remembering that they're resource teachers, so they're really there to help build the capacity of the classroom teachers, who are one of the most important people sitting in front of students with exceptionalities, build their capacity, help with complex portraits, make sure that processes like the IPRC process are well followed, make sure that there's strong communication with families. So they're building system level capacity, but they could have up to 8 schools, and that's only for elementary. Secondary resource teachers will have less schools just based on the size of the secondary schools.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Through Chair, thank you.
Okay, let's move on to the next one. Thanks, Claudine.
Okay. Thank you. This is business case 1146. We wanted to advocate for the additional of one social worker with specialization in neurodiversity. And this really aligns with what Superintendent Stunnick's just presented, but would have a little bit of a different role. This role is increasingly vital in our schools. We've seen a significant rise in the number of students diagnosed with autism spectrum disorders who are navigating complex mental health challenges. These students often require supports that go beyond traditional models of intervention. A social worker with expertise in neurodiversity brings the specialized skills needed to ensure that there's individual strategies that support emotional regulation, social connection, and academic success. They would be instrumental in collaborating with educators, families, and specialized community resources. And this is one of the most important roles, is helping families navigate the very complex world of medical supports outside of the schools, and we want somebody to help to be a liaison for families and take some of those pressures away. We hear that often in SEAC, that families cannot navigate the systems, and we really want to help this individual to help build the capacity of our school-based social workers, so that when they have students with ASD who are then facing mental health challenges, that they have the strategies and the capacity to do so with confidence, reducing stigma and creating a stronger sense of belonging for students in school. It does really address a critical gap in our system, and one that impacts well-being, engagement, and outcomes of some of our most vulnerable students.
Thank you. Okay, Trustee Davis.
I just, for clarification purposes, this is someone who will work with students that have been diagnosed with these things outside of the school system, and they're presented to us this way. We're not actually diagnosing children, I hope.
So through you, Chair, thank you for the question. Really, the role of this would be to develop the capacity of the school-based social workers to work directly with students who have ASD and mental health challenges in combination. Social workers have no ability to diagnose any students with mental health challenges nor ASD. We have psychoeducational consultants who have the ability to diagnose with ASD, and most kind of mental health challenges come to us clinically through external partners. And so that would be another really important connection is between community partnerships and helping families navigate those really complex community partnerships, and really knowing when we can provide tier 1 and 2 support and when we have to outsource support to community agencies that have higher levels of support, and helping families with that.
Excellent answer. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wonderful. I think we'll move on to 1147.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. As we continue to shift to a more responsive and inclusion approach to congregated programming through our new learning hubs, we are also transforming how we understand and support student needs. We are moving away from solely looking at formal diagnoses and emphasizing a more comprehensive student portrait, considering access to curriculum, levels of independence, communication, and sensory needs. To that end, we must strengthen the foundation of our practice and have assessment that leads directly to meaningful programming. So to that end, we are requesting the addition of one psychoeducational consultant to lead this work. That psychoeducational consultant would be essential in developing assessment tools and practice that inform and accurate individualized student portraits. They would support data-informed, actionable program decisions aligned with the 6 domains of effective practice, and ensure that assessments don't just end with a report, but lead to clear, supported implementation strategies in classrooms. This clinician will be pivotal in helping educators move beyond identification and towards real-time evidence-based programming, and would be instrumental in helping their colleagues, other psychoeducational consultants, do the same. So with our evolving learning hubs and the removal of diagnosis, the need for clinical expertise can guide these transitions, and it's really critical at this time. Thank you.
Wonderful. Any comments, questions? Okay, let's move on to 1148.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Thanks for the opportunity to advocate for the addition of one communicative disorders assistant, a CDA, to our special education team. This is a practical and impactful way to meet the growing demand for tier 1 and tier 2 communication supports in our schools, and especially in our kindergarten classrooms. What we hear from schools more and more often is that early intervention and oral communication focus in kindergarten is instrumental. To that end, we have collaborated with the curriculum team through the leadership of Superintendent Laura Chavarro to have a new focus on oral communication in the first 2 months of schools. And this would be our speech and language pathologists combined with our literacy coaches and the communicative disorders assistant would be instrumental in helping shape that learning and following through with that learning for the rest of the year as the supports after the first 2 months are taken away as they do other things. So they would be supporting with early screen years and targeted interventions, developing instructional materials, facilitating capacity build, the building with staff and students, and assisting with the development of professional literacy. Again, it's a really cost-effective, scalable solution to address the increased needs in oral communication in our kindergarten classrooms and support across all of our schools.
Any questions? How many do we already employ?
0.
Wow.
So we wanted to see with one, and it is fairly cost effective, what difference that made in our kindergarten programs. When we're hearing from superintendents in schools, we understand that enhanced oral communication in kindergarten programs, we think will increase levels of achievement, decrease levels of stress behavior, and really foundationally set the criteria for learning as they move out of kindergarten into grade 5.
Thank you. So the last one, the big one.
Yes. Yes, one of the top priorities in every single school and across the school board should be ensuring the safety, dignity, and inclusion of our most vulnerable students. To meet this commitment, we are requesting the addition of 100 educational assistants across our system. We have done initial allocations based on our student independence data and have a need to have access to additional LTO EAs to support students. We are seeing a significant increase, and I hear from many of you sharing this, in both the number and complexity of students with disabilities, including those who require personal care, mobility support, medical monitoring, and assistance with regulation and communication. Our current staffing levels are stretched in some cases, making sure that we want to make sure that we're providing support in a consistent and timely way. Educational assistants, as we all know, are vital in playing ensuring safety of students and personal care, helping to ensure self-calm, regulated learning environments, and helping promote the full participation and inclusion of students with exceptional needs in all aspects of classroom. We really believe that this would allow schools to respond more effectively to complex needs while reducing strain on current staff and ultimately create more stable, supportive environments. This is more than just about numbers. This is really about meeting real urgent needs in our classroom today, and I thank you for your consideration.
Any questions? Yes, Trustee Pomona.
Thank you, Chair. So how many EAs do we have currently on staff, full-time LTO?
So for next year, I'll talk about next year's numbers because this business case, if that's okay through you, Chair, if that's okay. We've currently allocated 1,977.5 based on our March capture date. And so, as you know, we take school-based level data through our student independence form and do an allocation based on that. But we know that we continue to have new students register or have new emergent needs. And we'd like to be able to run another data set in early August. Our team will be working and be able to allocate these to the schools in ready for school startup, so we do not delay the entry of any special education students.
Thank you. Through Chair, is that 1,977.5? Is that the same number that we have as this school year ends, or is that a decrease from what we currently have?
So that's a decrease to our current number as of right now, because if you recall, we had additional business case allocations last year through both LTO and permanent. So it is a decrease in number right now.
That's where I'm going.
What, sorry, which?
Well, I guess we approved stuff last year.
Yes.
And I don't even think this even brings us up to last year.
Correct. This does not bring it up to next year, but we have to make sure that we are being financially responsible.
100%.
And we're relooking at other elements of support through a shared support model, making sure that principals are strategic and flexible in their allocations. So we don't assign them to individual students, we assign them to the schools, which increases flexibility of students are away one day or students what we want to do is increase levels of independence. So it allows for principal leadership, intensive principal leadership in this area to be flexible in their allocation. And certainly we have renewed our EA allocation team. And I want to thank the members of my colleagues, many of who are sitting around this room, to have a continual process of ongoing reflection. for the allocation and distribution of educational assistance. But it is a reduction, absolutely.
Thank you. Just a follow up. So through you, Chair, the number one concern that I hear across the board is that we need more EAs, and that's the number one thing that we could do to make anything better. So I personally would prefer to err on the side of going ahead and making sure that we're filling those needs when I'm hearing about an EA allocated to 7 students, 10 students, and that's tough. That's really tough on a school environment. So I would like to see us at a higher number to make sure that we're better accommodating the needs of all of our schools right across the board. So I'm just going to put that out there that I would like to see this increase.
Talk about that after 7.
Yeah, we're gonna get a little bit a lot after 7 o'clock.
There's some funding we can move around, like the equipment, and also, Chair.
Hey, Cameron, how's the handle? Yeah, so.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Finish your questions.
If you had a magic wand, how many EAs would you have for next year? I would love to have a database answer to that. So if I can bring that back, I really don't want to throw a number out because we really do rely on school-based data to make sure that we're allocating needs. So we can look at capture from March to, it does take a lot of time and energy for my team. So I'd like to provide you a database response to that if I can bring that back. I know that doesn't help you with your decisions this evening, but it may be more than the 100, but we also understand our requirement to have a balanced budget.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we are properly staffing in these roles to meet the needs of all of our schools and our students, and recognizing again, this is the number one thing that I hear about.
100%. I could not agree more.
Yeah, so yeah, I don't know if
happy for the support. Thank you.
I imagine there's no way to get that information to us before we sit down tonight, but if there's a ballpark, that would be very helpful. So, okay.
Remember, the budget doesn't get approved till June 2nd. So at the budget time, you can put a motion on the floor. There's free time to put a motion without a notice. Move something. Spend more money.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Chair. Okay, thank you, Superintendent.
Okay, Trustee Ellis, did you have something to say?
Trustee Cameron.
Oh, Trustee Cameron's, Trustee Cameron online.
You. At some point, I think in a conversation with Superintendent Scucato, I wondered what keeps you awake at night, and I think I know from some of these numbers. And so I would say I have a question around EAs that take on multiple school board positions. Do you have a number on how many of ours, for example, work in other school boards as well? So they take, I don't know, they get particular on the calls that they take and schools that they'll go to and boards that they'll respond to. I know that we have that with occasional teachers as well, but do we know a number that might be doing that in the EA pool?
So just to clarify, I think we're talking occasional, right? We're talking.
Sure, we're talking ones who are not currently in an LTO or in a permanent position. So through you, Chair, I'm going to ask Massima to take that question.
Thank you for that question, Trustee Cameron, and through you, Chair. We know the lived reality of an EA at the wage rates that they are. They have competing demands in terms of where they work. So we are competing with other facilities as well. For an EA to make and sustain their living within the region of Peel. So you are right and correct that they don't exclusively particularly work for PDSD because they are trying to juggle between 2 and 3 jobs as they try to sustain their standard of living within the region. But we don't necessarily know or won't be aware in terms of what alternate employments they're engaging in and what kind of projects they personally engage.
Yeah, it's not disclosed, in other words.
Yeah.
So it's just hearsay. Does that answer your question, Trustee Cameron?
Yeah, I just want to add that $6.2 million for 100 EAs is worth our starting point. That in my mind, we should start right here. I know we're having this discussion next, but we should start here and everything else should flow from there. I don't know how much more we're going to have to spend after that, but this is where we should begin, in my opinion. Thanks.
Thank you, Trustee Cameron. So I just want to clarify. We went through this process last year and we did 125 or 150.
Through you, Chair, we did 125. and had to go back to the director's office to ask for additional because we can never predict. And unfortunately, we are funded through the population, overall student population. We have been having many discussions with the ministry about the unfair funding that happens. We went through the process of doing a special incidents portion, so looking at students who require more support, and submitted many students to the ministry, all of which were approved, but did not see a funding return on those on that data. So we continue to advocate and continue to receive a number of exceptional students that will require support throughout the year.
Sorry, 125 we approved, and then you got additional from the director's office to bring you up to 150?
No, I think that throughout the year, we received another additional 100 throughout the year.
Oh, whoa,
225.
225,
Correct.
and we only got 100 here.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, my God.
And the need is more than that.
Jeez.
We all go to our schools. Okay, thank you for that clarification. That's a somber note to leave it at. Claudine, thank you very much for presenting that data. And we're gonna now go on to field office support. Is that you, Paul, or who's that?
My work is
Okay, sorry.
I'm gonna pass it over at this point to Superintendent in the field, Craig Casler.
Okay.
Thank you, Associate Director Ms. Silva, and through you, Chair McDonald. I am presenting this business case on behalf of 13 field superintendents in the Peel District School Board, who feel this case will have a tremendous impact on the safety and well-being of students and staff directly in the classrooms throughout the Peel District School Board. The purpose of this business case is to request portable, agile, and proximal staff resources to support students requiring urgent social emotional support in elementary schools. On a daily basis, elementary schools across the system face acute challenges related to supporting children in crisis. New students arrive to Peel schools every day. An increasing number of these students arrive with significant needs that are not diagnosed or that require additional supports and time for them to settle into learning and classroom routines. Other students have experienced trauma that leads to dysregulated behaviors in the classrooms. Superintendents and principals work to shift human resources around to put caring adults in place to calm these difficult situations and to attempt to refocus students to their learning. However, there are limited options available that can be moved between schools as needed. These challenges are leading to increasing reports of violent incidents, increasing incidents of student exclusion, increasing instances of staff requiring medical leave, and increased pressures related to school safety and student well-being. Schools require targeted, in-the-moment intervention to support students in crisis and to build capacity among educators to manage and mitigate these challenges effectively. Allocation to and management by field office superintendents of these human resources would provide agile, proximal, and timely resourcing to elementary students experiencing crisis situations. Therefore, the purpose of this business case is to request 13 permanent child and youth care practitioners. Each one of these staff members would be assigned to field office locations and supervised by each of the 13 field office superintendents. The role of the child and youth care practitioner would be to provide in-classroom crisis intervention to support students identified through the student review meeting process. The role would include direct in-class support for students, but would also have a capacity building function by effectively modeling trauma-informed practices directly within classrooms. The addition of the child and youth practitioner role will reduce violent incidents, crisis situations, and exclusions by addressing root causes of behavioral challenges. This business plan closely aligns with the Peel District School Board's multi-year strategic plan, specifically by supporting Goal 2, safety and well-being. For students, we will create safe, respectful, and positive environments. For staff, we will facilitate supports grounded in human rights and equity to aid the creation of safe and inclusive environments. We'll also provide support to monitor and assist students in accessing timely interventions, and resources. This request ranks as the highest priority business case for all field office superintendents. It is our only request. Request in this business case is for a permanent staffing allocation and so would be categorized as a multi-year designation. Thank you for your consideration.
Thanks, Greg. Questions or comments? I don't think it's fair to ask this question, but you're asking for 13, one for superintendent. And we have field offices, which is also a group resource area. Is there a reduced number that would be done if we, because we have to cut, I'm sorry to say. Could we get away with half this?
Yeah. So certainly, I think the field superintendents would be thankful for whatever we receive, but the key to this resource here again is that it is portable, agile, and proximal. The idea is that each one reports to a specific superintendent who knows the specific needs of their schools, and so to be able to move one of these staff members the next day to a school that's in crisis. Is the key value of this specific resource. Once we start spreading these resources to be shared between superintendents, it loses that aspect of being portable, being agile, and being proximal.
Trustee Davies.
So I noticed that their base of operation will be the field office. But I don't see anything for mileage. If we're sending the different schools and stuff like that, how's that going to be handled?
Through you, Chair, would that be something that Tanya could comment on?
Through you, Chair, certainly we would have to add mileage to that request because typically when people have different locations, they would count mileage from what we call our base location. So the field office would be their base location, wherever they're assigned, they would then claim mileage for. So perhaps an estimate just wasn't done for this.
Sorry, Michelle.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and I appreciate I'm speaking out of line, but I had a moment when my case came up. So with the CYW supplies, mileage and cell phones, noting that these people are often in others' homes and in community, and so mileage and phones for supplies.
Okay, thank you. You have a question, Mr.
To you, Chair, I was just thinking to Superintendent Greg Cassidy's comment. Would we be able to align, if we had to reduce the number of these roles, would we be able to align them by family of school? Would that help kind of group them in a way so that they wouldn't be so far away from their neighborhood? Like I'm thinking of my own family of schools, not to say the issues are all the same, but there seems to be themes, especially amongst like geographic location. There might be a theme or a common issue.
Through you, Chair McDonald, I think it's an interesting model, Trustee Ellis, that you bring forward. Again, that would need to be worked out. However, again, the alignment with specific groups of schools, with the specific superintendent, with the specific staff within a specific region is the value of this. We certainly have a number of staff in the board, far more than 13 across the board that are in this role. The value of these specific ones are that they is again the ability to mobilize these staff members quickly based on what the superintendent of schools can identify as an absolute crisis situation within their unit. The challenge of centrally assigned roles or roles shared between families of schools is it takes a tremendous amount of time in order to get those resources into schools.
And I don't really belabor this, but the field offices, there's 7 in Brampton and 6 in Mississauga.
8 and 5.
8 and 5? 8 and 5. Okay.
Thank you.
No other questions?
Stan had one, but I think pretend of it
Disappeared. Okay, thank you very much, Craig. And now we're gonna go on to facilities. And here we go. Here we go.
Thank you. And through you, Chair McDonald. I have 5 business cases to present, starting with 1218. In this business case, the purpose is to adjust our discretionary budget for maintenance services to reflect increases in price escalation for supplies and contracted services. The supplies and contracted services for maintenance services is currently at $15,577,000. This contract includes contracting services, which a large component includes inspection, servicing of HVAC units, plumbing, elevators, roof repair, electrical, and fire safety systems. This also includes a component for maintenance supplies. The supplies and contracts services budget components have not been increased for inflationary costs in 10 years. We have a number of significant contracts that are coming due this year. We do expect that there will be significant increases associated with that, and that is one of our rationales for this business case. We have not factored in potential tariff increases related to steel and aluminum, which we expect will significantly also increase these contracts beyond what we expect. Of course, that is still very much an unknown right now. Unfortunately, our department has reached a point where it is very difficult to keep up our standard of care and functioning of our schools without this inflationary increase. The request is for a 2% inflationary increase of $311,000, $550 annually. Thank you. Glad to take any questions.
Any questions? Seeing none, we'll go on to the next one, 1219, Eco Schools.
Thank you. And this is the ask for our energy and sustainability department. One of the major new items coming up this year is to cover the expenditures related to our mandatory Eco Schools program at the board, as well as development and implementation of our Peel District School Board Climate Action Plan. The Peel District School Board in 24-25 launched a monumental sustainability initiative board-wide, such as the Peel Climate Action Plan, as well as a 100% Eco Schools certification process across schools. This budget item is required to support the Peel District School Board's commitments and efforts in environmental stewardship, as outlined in the board's multi-year strategic plan. This business case includes 2 components. The first component allows for a $300 a day per teacher per school allowance to carry out Eco Schools duties at schools. As many of you know, Eco Schools is an externally funded program funded by the Toronto Conservation Authority. So this would be an ask so that the school board has funding to carry out additional work in this area. We have also budgeted in the second part, Eco Schools events, training materials and supplies at an estimate of approximately $500 per school throughout the system as part of a multi-year plan, as well as $19,500 for a climate action plan and symposium every year, which we will need funding for. We're currently planning an event for early July of this year, which will be funding with money that we can find within our department, but we do not have a sustainable budget. Thank you.
Any questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to utility rate increase.
This business case is for energy and sustainability. I do want to make a small correction in that in the detailed purpose part, it should not read 1.523 million, it should read $761,553, which is the ask for this business case. It's broken down into 4 major components. The first component is electrical costs, and these are based on inflation rates as well as our floor square footages. The natural gas costs are projected to decrease by $375,000, primarily due to the elimination of the federal carbon tax. But this, of course, is factored into the entire business case. The cost of water supply is expected to increase by $550,000, 459, due to the new water delivery service charges introduced by the Region of Peel in April 2024. These new charges are in addition to the traditional water, wastewater consumption charges, leading to a significant increase projected for this year. We also have a small number of schools that are still on heating oil. So you'll see a $37,772 ask for heating oil increase, also due to federal carbon tax elimination for these schools. Most of these schools, of course, are in Caledon, as most. Thank you. Glad to take any questions.
Great. Seeing none here, we'll move on to inflationary.
This is for facility services, and this is to increase our discretionary budget for the operation services to reflect the increase in escalation for supplies. This is particularly for custodial supplies in the department. The requested increases for $133,000 for custodial supplies for the 25-26 fiscal year, and the request is to address the increasing costs driven by supplier inflationary adjustments.
Seeing no questions, we'll go on to the last one, gasoline.
So the last one, this business case was before you the previous year, and is to secure funding for the supply of gas for custodial grounds equipment. Historically, facility operations relied on custodial and facilities management staff to pick up and purchase gasoline for custodial equipment at schools. Due to health and safety and liability concerns regarding staff insurance, this practice is deemed unsustainable. To address this concern, facility operations are requesting a gasoline delivery for a contracted service for that. This will require approximately 8 deliveries for elementary schools per year, and 8 deliveries per secondary school and 4 per elementary school per year. The Dufferin Peel Catholic District School Board is already contracting out this service, so we have a good estimate. The estimate cost is approximately $100 per delivery, with a total expense of $135,600.
No rebate and carbon tax on that.
Pretty fine. A lost scope gasoline in the future. Yes.
Okay, seeing no questions, thank you, Thomas. So we'll move on to learning technology service support.
Thank you, and through you, Chair McDonald. Business case 1158 is the Vista system upgrade. This business case supports the upgrade of our HRMS system, Vista, to a supported version with new functionality and remove security risks associated with the current legacy version. The Vista system is currently on a version that will no longer be supported within the next 12 months. This requires an upgrade to the current version. The upgrade will bring many benefits, including more functionality for HR department processes, removal of security risks, and higher efficiency in processes and reporting. With the current version of Vista being unsupported shortly, the status quo is not a recommended option. We've performed a jurisdictional scan of other GTA boards on their HR and finance systems. With that jurisdictional scan, we find that the proposed cost for the Vista system provides excellent value. As a comparator, another GTA board, which is about 1/3 our size, presently they're going through the same situation, upgrading their current versions. What they pay today between HR and finance is $1.1 million a year. Post upgrade, they'll be in the $1.5 million a year area. With our upgrade, our proposal here, our combined ERP, so that would be HR and finance yearly, will be $846,000. So really drives good value. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? So, I live on upgrading and being on the current life cycle plan. When was the last Vista upgrade done?
That I believe my colleague may be able
Okay.
to answer.
Sorry, I didn't ask that.
Thank you for that question. So morning, Martin. The last version that we upgraded, that we should have upgraded was 2013, which was then upgraded in 2021. So we're working on the upgraded version from the 2013 version to the current version of I forget what the denominations are, 7 point something, which is the
We're
current.
about 4 years behind, is what you're saying?
More than 4 years behind.
More than 4 years
Yeah,
behind.
absolutely.
So we're probably not supporting the current OSs or anything like that. So this is upgrades, not just Vista, but the OS it runs on.
We upgraded the OS a number of years ago.
Okay.
This is truly the incremental upgrades that occur with technology changes, and must I add that the finance, the employee information system, and SIS are 3 core functions of data within the board.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Okay, let's move on to 1159, Azure.
Azure Cloud Services. So PDSB is moving various systems to the cloud out of our data center, which means we're not using our equipment in the data center once we get through the transition phase. The move to cloud services brings many advantages, including better scalability, security, system patching, and system management. We also use the Azure Cloud for real-time security purposes, as it houses logs from various systems that our automation systems look at to determine threats in near real time. The amount requested through this business case is the delta between what our current Azure costs are and what our current budget is. Over the past 2 years, we postponed projects to pay for this delta. That is very difficult for the coming year as we have projects that need to be completed. There have been some anecdotal savings as we move to the cloud in the form of hardware, not needing to purchase new hardware for the data center, cooling and power, which would be a savings overall. We've also been able to move one person from that back office team into another gap where we had understaffed in LTSS. Happy to answer any questions.
Great, any questions? Trustee Promote.
Thank you, Chair. Please forgive my ignorance on this. I just want to, like, are there any concerns about moving all of our information to a cloud and no longer having that backup on site? There's no particular reason I'm asking about concerns.
Just to let you know, though, I don't know, it was 10 years ago, we had everything on site and someone turned the power on. It took a week before we had that system back up.
I'm big on redundancy when it comes to things like this. Like, I have things backed up at my house.
So I just want to give you that history, and that's when we started moving stuff off site. Anyway, I'll just carry that on.
Thank you for that question, Trustee Vermollian, through Chair McDonald. Whenever you move to the cloud, you are moving not to a single location. So it's not a data center in North York. It's dispersed across many different data centers. So there's built-in redundancy in cloud solutions.
And sorry, just a quick follow-up. Are there concerns about the security around that information when it's passed over there, or do we feel like this is solved?
Thank you for that question.
Thank you.
So the Azure cloud is our tenant. So it's an area within the cloud that we own and we manage. Unlike what they call a SaaS solution, which is a vendor solution, that is in their tenant, if you will. This is all within our control. So we still manage the security around that. So we still have full control.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
So you mentioned the potential cost savings. Have you put a number to that by any chance?
Thank you for that question. That is a difficult question because we're going through the transition. On a transition like this, typically your costs are higher during transition and then you'll see it come down. It's too early to forecast that. I'm sorry.
And you mentioned the word cyber. That's something hot and what I deal with in my job. I don't think it's a fair question to ask, but are we covered properly? I just see many instances of ransomware, et cetera, et cetera. Do you feel that we're covered sufficiently?
Thank you for that question. Yes, I do. I think in the coming weeks, you're going to be seeing more information around our cybersecurity posture. But Peel itself is looked at as certainly a leader in Ontario K-12. Through various audits through the last number of months, the auditors have really highlighted that we are cutting edge, not just public sector or K-12, but even private sector.
That is good news. Good news. Thank you. I can't tell you how many, every week I have security stuff in my work going on. But, okay. Any other questions around that one? I guess we'll move on to the next item, 1160.
Thank you, and through you, Chair McDonald. Business case 1160 is additional support ticketing solution. This is a joint business case, which my colleagues in curriculum and in HR, they're looking to piggyback on. In IT, we have an ITSM system. That's what we use to hand out our tickets or support tickets to staff. So in that type of system, the supervisor can take a look at everything that's in the queue. They assign it to staff. It's got a great dashboard. You can manage the calls. You can disperse them to make sure that people are not overwhelmed in a certain area. So in this particular case, the $65,000 is for additional licensing, which will allow us to add staff from the other departments that are looking to use this.
Seeing no questions, thank you very much. I much appreciate that. So we're going on to the last one, transportation.
Good evening. Thank you. I think the letter T is probably why I'm near the end, or I'm at the end. But anyway, through you, Chair McDonald, just wanted to note that I am presenting two requests related to student transportation services. One for additional funding to support having travel assistance accompany students with special needs on school buses, and that's to reflect actual usage. And the other for additional funding to support increases to the base contract with StopR's four operators for home to school transportation. So I'll start with business case number 1225, the travel assistant increase to budget. So with travel assistance, StopR collaborates with the special education department to ensure that travel assistance can be deployed as required to accompany students with special needs on buses. Travel assistance supports students for medical and safety reasons. The distribution of travel assistance is such that one travel assistant may be supporting and monitoring multiple students on the same vehicle. This is a travel assistance usage over the past several years has increased. And so the budget increase that's being requested is a reflection of the fact that usage continues to increase over time. There were considerations taken in the last couple of years to consider potential decreases to the budget through some mitigation strategies to reduce some of the time on buses that travel assistants were being used for. However, in spite of those efforts, the actual usage for travel assistance has continued to increase, even at a modest rate. And so for budget business case number 1225, the request is to actually better align the budget for travel assistance to reflect actual usage. And I will note that in the past couple of years, when potential budget decreases were considered, the actual usage of trustees exceeded the budget by a range of approximately 50% each year.
Okay, trustee Davis.
Is any of this funded by the ministry as in use it or lose it scenario?
So through you, Chair McDonald, the student transportation budget consists of, I guess, different pockets of funding. One is kind of the base contract that we have, that StopR has with operators at both the Peel District School Board and the Dufferin Peel Catholic District School Board would receive funding for. And that funding from the ministry covers a number of different items, including the cost that operators charge for providing home to school busing each and every day. It includes there's also costs that the operators incur for capital for their buses. That's covered off by the ministry funding. Then there's also pockets to cover fuel on its own, bus driver recruitment and retention. And then there's also additional costs for specialized vehicles like bus, minivans, taxis, and the like. Within the larger base contract funding that the ministry provides, the ministry also includes items for what's known as local priorities. And so there are some areas of discretion that every consortium can choose to use some of that funding for whatever they deem to be a priority to serve the students of their board or their consortium. So the answer to the question, if I may, is that it is one of those items where there's no designated funding line from the ministry to support. It is entirely up to the consortium to choose how they wish to use that fund.
Okay, and am I under the impression that this year, again, they are underfunding, transportation, as they have in past years, and we have to throw some more money at the kitty?
So through you, Chair McDonald, I'll start. I know Associate Director Gill would also like to comment. I will say that historically, transportation has been a challenge because of the costs that consortia like STOPR incur, and that it has been an ongoing issue with the ministry, involving the Ministry of Education and school boards across the province to try and obtain appropriate, adequate funding that's sustainable to support the ongoing cost of student transportation. A couple of years ago, the ministry did revise its transportation funding model after repeated attempts and requests from school boards to look at coming up with a model that makes more sense given the realities that school boards and consortia are facing. However, I would note that many school boards, even now with this revised and updated funding model, are still experiencing considerable challenges in terms of making ends meet. But I'll ask Associate Director Gill to comment further.
Through you, Chairman, actually, next item 7.2 is where we're going to talk about the revenue, which is the funding for the ministry as well as our expenditure before the business cases.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other questions, let's move on to the big item.
Thank you, Chair McDonald, and through you, business case 1226 is a request for an increase of $1.35 million to support STOPR through an increase to the base contract for the 2025-26 school year. As well as it includes amounts for summer school transportation and alternative education transportation. The consortium STOPR is in the process now of completing a 7-year contract with the 4 school bus operators that provide home to school transportation for our students. That 7-year contract also included an option for STOPR to enter into renewal extensions for up to 3 additional years, subject to negotiations between both STOPR and the operators to consider emerging issues that would be subject to negotiation between the parties. I will also note that there has been recent experience from other consortia that have had to issue a brand new RFP, a request for proposals, which have seen significant increases to the contracted daily base rate amounts that those consortia are paying to the operators. So in other words, there was a decision to be made about whether it was more cost effective to consider renewing the existing contract, subject to some changes based on negotiation with our operators, or whether to just issue a brand new request for proposals, noting that that could be subject to extreme price volatility in terms of much more significant cost increases to the board. The good news I will note is that through the work of Associate Director Gill, along with our General Manager of STOPR, the consortium has been able to negotiate quite diligently with our existing 4 operators, and we've been able to achieve extension agreements, which include modest increases to reflect inflation, as well as some local specific operator issues. But on the whole, the increases are actually quite modest, and we're compared to the alternative of having to issue a brand new RFP and understanding that those costs could have been significantly more. We're quite pleased with the fact that we were able to negotiate modest increases. What it does as well, it ensures that the operators have certainty around being able to provide transportation for the next 3 years, and therefore a guaranteed revenue stream for them, as opposed to the potential uncertainty of not knowing if they would be successful in an RFP process. And it also provides us with some continuity, a business continuity, in terms of knowing our operators, being able to make adjustments to service as required. And as trustees would be aware, we're also in the process of continuing to roll out regional program transportation. And that's been something that our operators have actually been quite supportive of working with us on. So all of that to say that while this is a request to reflect the increase in the base contract, the potential for the increase to have been much higher was certainly there if we had chosen to issue a brand new RFP.
Questions? So, this is the cost just to do the busing service, from what I understand. But you also talked about regional programs. Is that a line item in these 3 items in there? And regional programming, we're supposed to get funding from the government for that.
So through you, Chair McDonald, the ministry has provided funding dedicated for regional program transportation. I will note that that amount is not necessarily reflected here, but it has also sort of had a slight impact in the sense that our operators have had to make adjustments to their existing routes and to provide some additional service where they didn't before. But on the whole, the funding that's come in from the Ministry for Regional Transportation is basically a flow through in terms of it being a standalone money.
Thank you. No questions. So no questions. So we're now at the end of 14.9 million. I can't thank you all enough for all the great effort that came from all the various groups to bring these business cases, and we understand how important they're all to all of you. The reality is that we can't fund all of them, but you've done a great service to all your various groups and people that have suggested these, and and trustees around the table, I really appreciated the great work that you do. And we wish we also had the money to fund every initiative, but we will do our best. Thank you very much. I think I have to put this on the floor now. So let's start with Trustee Davies. Will you put that on the floor? And Trustee Cameron will second that. All those in receipt of this business case report? So approved. Okay, we're now going to move on to item 7.2. Now, just to get a time check, we're 12 minutes over our scheduled meeting time. I will ask for brevity on this report if we can. And we'll be taking a break after this meeting before we go into our trustees learning session to make big discussion. So I'll hand it over to Associate Director Hill.
So thank you, Chair McDonald, to you, Chair. Chair, I'm going to ask Trustee Charles to quickly go over the revenue. I think in our last meeting, we did talk about it in detail for the revenue, but just very, very quickly, we'll give it a high level overview, and then we'll talk about the expenses that for different areas, which are already part of the budget. And then the first page of that 3-page handout is where we combining the revenues and expenditures to talk about kind of where we sit now before the business cases are included into it.
Okay.
So with that, I'm going to pass to
Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Chair. So as Associate Director Gill mentioned, we are going to go relatively quickly. We're not going to spend a lot of time on the revenues, and Claudia will go through the expenses. I'm going to hand out the detailed pages in case you don't have them, but they've also been emailed to you for your reference. I'll just hand some copies out for people to see. The only thing I want to kind of call out on the revenue pages, because there was a question around transportation revenue, and you will see from the transportation perspective, which we did mention last time, we've had an increase of about 4 million in transportation this year. But just as a reminder that we did get some of the regional funding last year for the regional programs. So because the routes were submitted last year, we did that, and it was with the intention of a phased roll-in. So we did get funding for that, and the overall revenue for transportation this year is 72 point almost $8 million. So I'll turn over to Copper to go through the expenses.
Thank you, Tanya, and good evening, everyone. Through you, Chair. I'm happy to present, we're going to present the very last page of the budget. Okay, so that will be the summary of the operating expense. So similar to what I presented last budget development committee meeting, I'm going to show you the various dollars over the 2 years. So the current budget, the 24-25 budget, and going into 25-26 without business cases at this point. So therefore, the last column would show the change between the 2 years. And the very first column just shows the different departments that we have at the boards. So before we dive into the numbers, just want to recap a bit from the revenue and kind of connect it to the expenses. When we look at the revenue, we did see a lot of funding coming our way. But if you recall, most of this funding was for collective agreement or contracts like transportation money, for instance, was mostly because of the regional programs to us in turn have to pay for those expenses. So similarly, when we will look at the expenses, you see the increase to reflect the collective agreement increases. And also the other thing that we noted when we did the revenue was, if you recall, I had two columns there for the reason for change. I had an enrollment change and a compensation change. And in that enrollment change, we did see a lot of negatives there. So correspondingly, when we do our costing, we also have to adjust for that in our staffing and whatnot. So that's why you would see there will be a net off between those two. Enrollment changes, adjustments, and compensation. The other thing I want to highlight, and I think our superintendents did note some of those. Last year, many of the business cases were one time, meaning that it was only for the 24-25. So in their budget this year, we would have removed those business cases. Right? So if they need them, they have come back to ask for them again for next year. So that being said, we can look at the numbers, starting with the regionals. So if we look at regionals, you see the current year is $1.5 billion. Going into next year is $1.6 billion. So an increase of $100 million. And I just want to point out, if you look at regional, this is 1.6 billion of the total that you see at the bottom of $2 billion. So really, this represents 80% of our budget. And in the regional, we have everything to do with our students directly, well, in the classroom for instructional teaching and supplies, as well as the administrative staff. So that's where we spend most of our funding. So in that increase of 104, as I mentioned before, there's the enrollment adjustments as well as the compensation adjustments. So going down the list, I'm going to focus on the bigger items. So I'm going to go to the central org. So the central org is, we see a decrease of 15 million. That's because the ministry at that time, last year, the collective agreements were not a thing, right? But they did ask us to give us a percentage, what they think it would be, and do an estimate of what the expenses would be. But do not allocate those expenses, do not have them in our different departments, but just like a one line item, and correspondingly, we would do a one line item to offset it. So our estimate was that $14 million, which, this year going in 25-26, this is not the case. Now we know what the collective agreements are, and all the changes are being made in the corresponding departments. So therefore, we just get rid of that 14 billion that we did last year, plus some other items that we had to adjust. So we see finance support services next. You do see an increase of $1.8 million. So other than the compensation increases, finance also had like from the corporate support services before that has been dissolved, discontinued, or not sure the word is, from which was under Superintendent Wendy Dowling. Not Wendy Dowling, sorry, Wendy Dobson. And so with this, the department has now been split between finance support services and the facilities department. So in that $1.8 million also included the staff that finance got from the corporate support services. Innovation, you see there's a change. So that change is mostly because there has also been a reorg. So I guess in the past it used to be called innovation, research, and international programs, but now there's been reorg, so that's why you will see some in and outs as well. Equity, just because it's in minus, I'm just gonna speak quickly about that. That's because there were business cases last year, which were one time that we have removed for this year. Curriculum, again, there were business cases last year that have been removed, and there has been a little bit of reorg as well. Going on to the next one, safety and well-being at 7 million in change. So, and just underneath safety and well-being, you see spec ed. So you see a positive in safety and well-being and a negative in spec ed. So that's because there has been a reorg between those two departments to make them more focused in the initiatives that they support. Going on to facilities, facilities and environmental support services, we see an increase, and as mentioned earlier, this is because they now have part of the corporate support services within that department, and you see just underneath facilities, you see corporate support services with a negative of 5.1 million that has been split between finance and facilities. Learning technology support services, that's mostly to do with the compensation and some reorgs that have happened, as well as contracts increases because of inflation. Transportation support services, like with Superintendent Thomas talked about that. This would change from 1 year to the other. 6 million represents the regional programs that we're going to have for next year, which has been funded from the ministry, and that Controller Tanya just mentioned. You've seen an increase in the revenue, so that's why we are matching the expenses accordingly. So with that being said, the bottom line of operating expenses has moved from $1.9 billion to a bit over $2 billion, hence a net increase of close to $100 million.
Okay.
So have you had any questions through the chair before we go on to just the summary page?
Let's go right to the bottom line. You're going to tell us 11 million, right?
Okay, thank you, Chair. So again, the summary page really bringing those two aspects together, and the columns are pretty much set up in the same way. You have last year's budget, this year's proposed budget, and the change. I will just focus on this year's budget. I won't really speak to the change too much because really we've talked about that separately. When you look at the core ed operating grants, that's what we covered before. That's the second page in your package, and it's increased by 190, almost 92 million. And we've talked about many times, most of that is flow through cost for salary. I'll jump down kind of to the middle where you see operating expenses, right? Because that's really what was on the third page. And you can see that our operating expenses have increased to by 99 million. So again, most of the increases right now are related to salary increases, because as Copper mentioned, I mean, there was been some reworks, but really the majority of that. So you can see that in terms of revenue, we have additional 191 million in change versus our salaries are going up. Sorry, our expenses are going up by about 99 million. Then when you look at the next line in your revenues, that's responsive education programs. So those are our TPAs. Those are the ministry will give us specific contracts. They don't necessarily announce them all at once. So right now we have about 18 million that's been announced. And because these are contracts, you will see again when you go to the expense line below that they're exactly set off by that. So those are, they do not really bring any additional funds. And these are the areas where for these types of contracts, these for sure, if we don't use them, we have to return the funds. So therefore we assume that they're fully spent. The next category is minor TCA, which is our capital. So if there's any small types of capital that we use from our operating, that would show here. And there is, again, a similar offset in our expenses. Below that, you have school renewal. We talked about school renewal a little bit last time, but school renewal also has a certain amount that can be used for operating, and that's a set amount. And so, again, we assume that that's going to be used fully for that, and we can't use it for anything else. So that's kind of, so again, if we use less than 5.9 million, it would simply go back into school renewal. We could not use it to support any other spending. Capital related revenue, those are strictly capital. And again, you will see below that they're pretty much offset with each other. And in there are things like we're funded for our interest on our debenture payments, the amortization of our assets, the portable. So those are the types of expenditures in there. And again, they're not interchangeable in terms of our operating. Next, you will see school generated funds. These are the funds that are raised at the school level. And again, the schools maintain those within each school. And those are funds raised for things like field trips, pizza days, regional learning choices, some of their fundraising. So whatever they're raised in the school is for a specific purpose and it stays within the school. And therefore, again, when you go into our expense line, those are totally offset. So if the school doesn't use it fully in that year, they keep it within the school, but must use it based on the reasons they raised it. The next one is other revenue. Now, these are things that are more recoverable. So in here we have things like staff on loan, and some of our international student medical insurance fees or admin fees. So that's not really the actual tuition fee. So anything that's really more of a recoverable type of expense would be in those. And below that, we have miscellaneous revenue. So miscellaneous revenue is really the only other thing that contributes to our operating per se. And within here is where we have international students, our permit fees, and our interest income and solar revenue. As you can see below, that doesn't get offset. So everything else I've been saying has been offset, that does not get offset. So that's revenue that does contribute to our bottom line. And lastly, in the revenue side, you'll see educational development charges. And education development charges are raised for a specific purpose. And there's restrictions on those. And so those we'll talk about later, but they do not contribute to our operating. And actually, we need to remove those when we're calculating our compliance. And then expense line, you will see that we have also some EDC interest related to the fact that we have to borrow money sometimes when we purchase land. So below our, so we have our revenue, total revenue line that becomes almost 3 million, and our expenses are 2.23. So if you go further down, I'm only going to mention 24-25 because if you look at the 24-25 column, you'll see that last year we had deferred revenue. And that was because last year we still had the enveloping that hadn't been fully used. As mentioned before, the ministry has now reduced the constraints of certain grants. And they have required us to use all our deferred revenue. And so therefore, this year we have really zero to contribute to most of our activities in that space. So given that, our preliminary surplus, as we call it, would be 35.9 million. However, as mentioned before, from a financial perspective, we have EDC revenue, and so the ministry doesn't allow us to use that. So once we look at our totally collected funds or net revenue, they then tell us all the things that we have to take out before we have a compliance number. And so EDC is the primary thing that we have to remove from the monies that we do have. And so for 25-26, we're projecting to get 26 million, but then there's some interest. So there's a net of about 24.5 million in EDC that we have to take out of the 35 million that is our initial surplus. Additionally, there's some interest type charges that we have to take out. So the ministry funds us for interest, but based on the timing, we don't pay it out at the end of the year, but we have to hold it. And there's also some other things that are accounting based that we have to account for, such as the asset retirement obligations, the sinking fund, and so forth. So given all the things the ministry has us either take out or put in, we're left with 11.2 million as our true compliance surplus prior to the business cases. And that's why it's called a compliance surplus, is because we have to do certain things, take things in and out before we get to that.
Any questions around this? 11.2 million? So one thing I'm noticing, there's no reserves.
Yeah.
Through each year. So we do have reserves, but we're, again, because we're not using them, they're not shown here. But typically, last year we would have used reserves to help us balance. That's correct.
So, maybe Associate Director Gill, we have 14 million of business cases.
Yes.
Would the reserves be available for funding that, or I know the government's put more restrictions on using reserves?
So to you, Chairman, because we've been in deficit last 3 years.
Yeah.
When we say it, truly we have balanced budget last 3 years. We were in deficit and then we used the reserves to balance the budget.
Correct.
So because we've been doing that for 3 years, so we have to go to the ministry, in fact, the minister, every time, even the board approved the budget, we needed the minister's approval to approve the budget. So they've been asking each year from us to, hey, come up with it, show us your plan, how you're gonna balance the budget without using the reserves. So we were working at it for 3 years, and last year when we sent the budget to them and asking for the minister's approval, they did approve it, but they did send that letter to the director saying what we expect next year you is to balance the budget without using this.
That's the question.
Okay. Okay, so, and let me just carry on then. So we could balance the budget July 2nd.
Yes.
And we have a reserve. And we had Claudine there, plead a case that she needs more EAs. So when she comes to you and says, I need 100, does that come from that?
I think let's have that discussion next time.
Okay, okay. Okay, thank you. What else?
Maybe this is best reserved for the next part, but I'm almost thinking. Is the next part closed?
Yeah.
For the next part.
Okay, I'm gonna ask for people to, unless there's no other questions, I don't see anything online. I'm gonna ask, I guess, let's start again at Trustee Clark, put this on the floor, Trustee Bailey. All of the receipt of this oral report on our 11 million surplus. Thank you. We're gonna now go to so we're now going, no communications, no motions, no notice of motions. So we're gonna go straight to adjournment. Trustee Davies, Trustee Cameron, to second that. All those in favor, we're now adjourned.